The undefeated Giants are soaring towards today's confrontation with their old nemesis, the Los Angeles Rams. Last week's victory was punctuated with the long passing successes wrapped around the punishing running game administered by Rodney Hampton. Defensively, spectacular efforts by second-year man Keith Hamilton and veteran Mark Collins kept Tampa Bay harassed throughout, leaving little doubt that the buck stopped here. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the NFL in week number 3. The Giants today, episode number 3. I'm Bob Papa, with me, Phil McConkey. 1 hour from now, the Giants, with their third game of the season, they'll take on the Los Angeles Rams right here on Channel 2. And Phil, you take a look at last week's ball game, a big win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and for the Giants, a situation where they didn't play to the level of their competition.
Bob, it happens so many times in not only professional sports but amateur sports. You go out and play a pickup game, you start to play down to the level or sometimes up to the level. Fortunately for the Giants, they were able to maintain their composure and put down a team that they're supposed to beat.
Okay, for the Giants, some big defensive plays, including the goal line stand. That seemed to rally this ball club.
Well, again, you talk about not letting the opposition, a bad team, get into the game. They score there, Tampa Bay. The score is 20-14, and they have some gas in their tanks, and they'll try to come back. But that was a big defensive stand, an old-time Giant defensive stand.
You know, Dan Reeves is known for his offense, but even the Giant players said, we understand the defensive tradition here. Let's talk about that offense. We've seen now two different styles through the first 2 weeks of the season. What Dan Reeves' team will we see now?
Well, I think it might be a combination of the first two. You go into Chicago, it's wide open, throw the ball, a lot of trick plays. This past week against Tampa Bay, it was pound it. And I thought Dan Reeves, that's all he wanted to do this game was pound it up in there. So this offense is very versatile. We've talked about that before. This week with Los Angeles Rams showing an 8-man front, I think you'll see Phil Simms put it up a little bit more than last week.
Did that offensive line at all change their blocking schemes? Because we talked about their trap blocking in the weeks gone by.
Well, it looked like they just wanted to power the ball. This is something the Giants have done so much of in the past. Dan Reeves has incorporated this trapping, misdirection style of offense. This past week against Tampa Bay, I think his game plan was just to shove it up in there and steamroll the opposition like the Giants have done in the years past.
Well, this is a major test for the Giants today, and it should be interesting how they will respond. Let's take a look at today's menu for this week's program. Dan Reeves would like nothing better than to be undefeated going into the week off. He explains what has to happen to attain that goal in our Coach's Corner. In our player profile, we'll talk to the Giants' good scout in the offensive line, guard Bob Kratch, who's always prepared for whatever his team needs. We'll hear from the Giants' voice from the heavens. He's veteran public address announcer Bob Shepard. That's in our Inside Look this afternoon. Coming up next, Dan Reeves has the Los Angeles Rams in his sights in our Coach's Corner after this break. Welcome back, everybody. This afternoon, the Giants and Rams from Giant Stadium here on CBS. Coach Dan Reeves is facing a familiar opposing coach in Chuck Knox. They met twice yearly when Reeves was at Denver and Knox at Seattle. I asked Coach Reeves if he looks forward to this matchup with Coach Chuck Knox.
Well, if it was just Chuck and I playing, we had the same teams, it probably would be. But, you know, I've enjoyed the competition with Chuck. You know that his teams are always going to be prepared. You've got to do a good job of getting your guys prepared, or he'll make you look awful bad, because they're always well coached. They're schooled to do the things that they're supposed to do, and you can count on them being in the right places and playing hard, and hopefully that's what our team will be all about too.
I'm going to hit you with a list of players on the Rams. We'll start with quarterback Jim Everett.
Of course, Jim has all the tools that you look for in a quarterback, a very strong arm. He's a big guy that can see over the rush. He's a guy that's very hot and cold. I think last year against the Giants, you know, it's his personal record for the highest percentage completion he's ever had. There's certain teams he likes to play against. I think the Giants are one of them.
Okay, wide receiver Henry Ellard, a veteran.
Well, I think that's it. He's got great skills. He's a guy that's very capable because he's a great route runner. I think he's a lot like Mark Jackson and Mike Sherrard in it. He's been around the league a long time, has the speed and quickness, but he's a great route runner and can catch the ball in a crowd.
Running back Cleveland Gary.
A big guy that, you know, I had played against him in the Senior Bowl when he came out of college, and I was really impressed with him because he's a complete back. He can block, he can run, he can catch the ball. He's just a good football player that you can count on because he's a big guy that can push the pile.
Tight end Troy Drayton.
Well, he's stepped in and become a threat. That's a guy that you certainly have to look at and say, we got to know where he is because they try to get the ball to him. And you know, that's something that Ernie Zampese, their coordinator's always done, is involved the tight end back to the days of San Diego. So we've got to account for him in every situation.
All right, on their defense, defensive end Robert Young.
Well, he's got 4 sacks. He's a guy that's more of a pass rush type of a player than he is a run stopper. He's not a big guy, but he's relentless and he stays after you.
And Sean Gilbert.
Well, if you look around the league, there's probably 4 or 5 defensive tackles that really impress you, you know, with Perry from Cleveland, as well as Ball at Cleveland, Cortez Kennedy from Seattle, and I think Gilbert's in that class. He's a big 320-pound guy that can really run, has got great quickness, and he's really coming into his own, had 4 sacks last week.
How far back do you go in the film? The Rams beat the Giants last year. 2 years ago here, they threw an 8-man front at the Giants and just really stuffed the run. Do you go that far back in looking at the film?
Well, we look at it because our running game is one of the real keys, and I looked at the game last year, and they used a lot of 8-man front last year. We've got to be willing to spread it out, throw the football, and you know, dictate to them, not let the Rams dictate to us. So we've got to be ready to counter whatever attack they come after us with. We just can't sit there and bang our head against the wall against the 8-man front.
Okay, in the first week of the season in Chicago, you were forced to use your passing game more. Last week against Tampa, you ran the ball down their throat. What Giants will we see today?
Well, a lot depends on what the Rams do. As I said, if they come after us with an 8-man front, we're not going to sit there and try to take them on. We're going to try to throw the ball when they expect us to run it, and we're going to be willing to do whatever it takes to move the ball. We've got to keep the ball away from their offense because, as I said, Jim Everett has done a great job against the Giants in the past. He has a lot of confidence. We've got to keep them on the sideline as much as we can.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Dan Reeves talking about viewing the Rams and taking what they'll give. You know, we've always known Dan to be an offensive coach in Denver with Elway throwing the ball. It seemed like he's willing to make some changes.
Bob, you know Dan Reeves. Dan Reeves is a smart guy. He knows coaching the New York Giants, coming into Giant Stadium, you better play good defense because the fans here expect it.
Okay, for the Giants and their defense, you take a look at the situation, and Lawrence Taylor obviously had the big game in Week 1. He played well last week, but it's really another touch of old and new that is leading this defense.
Well, you look at the old guy, number 25, Mark Collins, and he's been able to come up and step up. Article in New York Times a couple weeks ago, quoting an anonymous receiver in the NFL, one of the top guys that said he hates playing against Mark Collins because it's tough to shake him. On the news side, you got a guy, Keith Hamilton, number 75, coming in, 3 sacks against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's a big game for anybody.
I think this new defensive system that Mike Nolan and Dan Reeves have brought in makes the secondary guys very excited because that was one of the strong suits in Denver as well, and Collins seems to be rejuvenated.
He really seems to be. He's thriving under this defense, and he's a guy that can come up and take on a 300-pound pulling guard, make the play, and then stay with the speedsters down the sidelines.
All right, that's the Giants defense for you. It's Bob Kratch's day in the sun on the offense. We will explain why when we return in our player profile after this. In the 4 years that Bob Kratch has been a member of the Giants, he's had to be ready to fill in at either tackle or guard with little warning. His diligence to preparation, concern for fitness makes Kratch the ideal jack of all trades. Now, with Eric Moore suspended for the first 4 games, Bob has had an opportunity to win the starting job, and the coaches like what they see. Coming to the Giants was coming home for Bob Kratch, who was born in Brooklyn but raised in Mahwah, New Jersey. A local good guy. Bob Kratch is our player profile.
I'm originally from New Jersey. I grew up in a town north of here, about 20 minutes, called Mahwah, New Jersey. just your typical suburb outside of New York. It was a wonderful place to grow up. A lot of kids in the neighborhood. And basically, I began my football career in the Mahwah Little League in 1976. On the day I was drafted, I was home in Mahwah, New Jersey with my wife and my family, and it was a very long and, for me, a stressful day. I was hoping to maybe go earlier in the draft, possibly in the second round, and when I finally got the call from the New York Giants, it was like the world was let off my shoulders, because it was such a turning point, especially in a football player's career, whether you're going to have a good chance to make it in the NFL or if you're going to have to, apply and use your education off the field.
Of course, Bob, I think, has been a pleasant surprise. We saw him on film last year, and when he was in the ball game, he did an excellent job. But because of the situation with Eric Moore, Bob has been able to take an awful lot of plays throughout training camp. He hasn't missed any time. He's a tough guy. He does a great job versus the run or in the running game of knocking people off the line of scrimmage, and he does a great job in the pass. A complete player. He pulls well in space. Great competitor. I think that's the biggest thing that you look for in Bob. Here's a big guy that is really strong, has really paid the price, and I think he's going to get better as the year goes along.
The two things I really enjoy about the NFL is the sheer excitement of the game. You can't really compare. I can't really relay the intensity of what it feels like on a game day, especially in a 2-minute situation when you're driving and you're one-on-one pass blocking and you have to get in the end zone or get into field goal range. That's something that's very competitive in every phase of athletics. I think the other thing is the ability, let's say, to be a role model, especially with children. The respect that you can command from young kids and kids that are, especially kids that are needy or handicapped. I think that's something that I'm very fortunate. It doesn't matter how successful you are as a ball player. If you play in the NFL with the New York Giants, you can really touch a lot of people's lives. And that's something I'll always cherish, and I'm lucky because I always have the ability to do that, to maybe stop in and go to a hospital and see kids that are sick, even down the road, because obviously kids really look up to NFL ball players, especially kids that are sick with cancer or terminally ill, and if you can just brighten their day up, there's so much gratification in that.
Really one of the warmest Giants, Phil. We should congratulate Bob and his wife, Christy, for the birth of their second child, but really a guy who likes to give a lot back to the community.
Well, also, he likes to give a lot to the New York Giants. Here's a guy that's in there early in the morning. He stays late. He's always after practice, hitting the dummy, getting extra work in. It's great to see one of the good guys do well.
A lot of people talk about the Giants and their win in 1990 in both the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl, and everyone seems to forget that Bob Kratch was in both of those games at crunch time.
Well, he started the game as a backup to Eric Moore, and he replaced Moore in both the championship game and the Super Bowl, and the rest is history. The Giants went on to win, and Bob Kratch's performance was a big part of it, both of those wins.
As a role player that Kratch is and now a starter, what is the mindset of a player to stay ready each and every week until called upon?
Well, not everybody in this league can be stars. You have to have your stars, your Lawrence Taylors and your Jumbo Elliott's, but you need the role players too, guys that'll come in and do whatever it takes to win. Play tackle, play guard, whatever they ask them to do, show up on the Brooklyn Bridge at midnight to play a football game.
All right, Phil, when Bob has his glasses on, you gave him a nickname as well.
That's right, Mr. Magoo.
His voice harkens images of the sound of a mythical deity, and for most Giant fans, he is the only stadium announcing voice they have ever known. Our inside look we'll hear from Bob Shepard when we return. Welcome back, everybody. The Giants and Rams this afternoon. When returning World War II servicemen went to Yankee Stadium for a baseball game, they were treated to the dulcet, measured tones of Bob Shepard on the public address system, a voice that has now rained down over Giants and Yankee faithful for a half-century. When Bob Shepard is not at the stadium, he's busy teaching speech at St. John's University, where he starred as a quarterback on the football team and where he still announces the baseball games. The man with the voice from up above, Bob Shepard, is the focus of our Inside Look.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please rise? And now, to honor America, please join Mr. Philip Kratch of the Metropolitan Opera Company, accompanied on trumpet by Mr. Mel Broyles, also of the Metropolitan Opera Company, as Mr. Kratch sings our national anthem. Many years ago, when I was playing semi-pro football and teaching speech, I was asked to do an exhibition football game on Long Island. The game was being played between the New York Yankee football team and the Chicago Rockets. And when I had finished the game, someone asked me if I wanted to go down to Brooklyn and see if I could qualify for the job there to do the Brooklyn Dodger football team at Ebbets Field. I went down, I was hired, and for that year I did the football Dodgers in that particular league. At the end of that year, the football Dodgers folded, and I went to the New York Yankee football team. When the New York Yankee baseball team heard me doing football, they asked me if I would do baseball. And all of this started some 40-some years ago. I've been with the New York Yankee baseball team for about 43 years. And when the New York Giant football team came to Yankee Stadium, the Giants hired me to do the football. So I was doing Yankee baseball and Giant football at Yankee Stadium, I guess for more than 40 years. My regular work is at St. John's University, where I'm a professor of speech. I went to St. John's Prep, I went to St. John's University, I played football and baseball there, and I guess my association with St. John's has been very, very close over these years. Fortunately, my sports activity does not in any way interfere with my teaching activity, and therefore I'm able to enjoy the best of two worlds, the academic world and the sports world. I also do St. John's basketball and St. John's football. If I could sum up what a good public address announcer should be, I think he should have these three qualities. It should be clear, it should be concise, it should be correct. Linebacker 54, Carlton Daly. Linebacker 94, Michael Brooks. Linebacker 56, Lawrence Taylor.
When I hear that voice, I still get butterflies. You know when Bob Shepard speaks, it's game day.
When Bob Shepard speaks, people listen. Now let's talk about today's game, Giants and Rams. Very important game for the Giants, the way their schedule is laid out.
Well, it looks like in the NFL, every week is a must-win situation. But for the Giants to get into the playoffs this year, Bob, they've got to win this game to go 3-0 into the bye week, because then they're on the road at Buffalo, at Washington, home against Philadelphia, a tough three-game stretch before their second bye week.
Yeah, and Mark Rippon could be back for the Redskins in time for that ball game if his injured knee heals. Now, what about the Rams? They seem to just have the Giants' number. They've won 5 out of 6 against the Giants. You've played in this rivalry. Why?
I don't know. One time back in '85, the goalpost fell down as I was waiting to catch a punt. But new players come in, they don't know about the history of this game. It just seems to be a coincidence and a streak where things happen. But it actually, nothing has to do with, in the past, to do with the game today.
Okay, Dan Reeves touched upon it earlier in the coach's corner, that Jim Everett runs hot and cold. How do you beat Jim Everett if you're the Giants?
You beat Jim Everett by getting to him early and hitting him, putting him on the ground, because he's a guy, if you do that, he could fold a tent and want to go home.
Now, will the Giants mix up that offense because they ran the ball so well last week, but the Rams have always just stuffed it?
Well, I think with Chuck Knox and that defense, they'll have to open it up a little bit and be a bit more creative than they were last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Maybe some middle ground between the first and second games of the year for the Giants.
Has this Giant team come together as we expected? Have they molded into that Dan Reeves image?
Well, they're starting to, Bob. It takes quite a while for a team to get its identity down. But that goal line stand, the way the offense is producing, they seem to be gelling in just the right time.
Okay, we'll find out about 30 minutes from now. Today at the stadium, Lisa Guyton and some of the other players' wives will be accepting donations for the Red Cross National Disaster Fund in support of flood victims in the Midwest. You can support their efforts by calling the American Red Cross number. Here it is, 1-800-842-2200. That's 1-800-842-2200. Well, that wraps it up for this week's edition of the program. Don't forget the Giants and Rams. The NFL Today with Greg Gumbel and Terry Bradshaw coming up. Then the Giants will mix it up right here on CBS. For Phil McConkey and our entire crew, I'm Bob Papa. We'll see you same time next week right here on Giants Today.